The rain came down in sheets that February night, turning the streets of Little Italy into rivers of reflected neon and shadow. I should have left an hour ago. The sensible thing would have been to lock up petal and stem, my little flower shop, and head home before the storm got worse. But sensible had never been my strong suit, especially when it came to the small pleasures of arranging the last bouquet of roses just right, making sure each stem stood at the perfect angle to catch the morning light. My grandmother always said I loved flowers more than people. She wasn't entirely wrong. Flowers didn't lie. They didn't leave. They just bloomed and faded with an honesty that I found comforting in a world that had given me more than my share of disappointments. I was 28 years old, and this shop was everything I had. Well, almost everything. There was also my grandmother, Rosa, lying in a hospital bed 3 blocks away with a heart condition that was slowly killing her. The doctor said she needed a procedure, something with a name I couldn't pronounce and a price tag I definitely couldn't afford. $50,000. It might as well have been 50 million. The thought made my chest tight as I locked the register and pulled my coat tighter against the chill that seemed to seep through the old brick walls. The shop had been my dream, purchased with every penny of the small inheritance my mother left me before she died when I was 16. Rosa had raised me after that, working 2 jobs to make sure I could go to community college, pursue my passion for botany and floral design. Now it was my turn to take care of her, and I was failing. I grabbed my purse and keys, flipping off the lights one by one. The shop plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the rain-streaked windows. I loved this place, the exposed brick walls I'd painted soft cream, the vintage wooden counters I'd refinished myself, the coolers humming quietly with tomorrow's fresh deliveries. It smelled like earth and petals and potential. The back door always stuck, swollen from years of New York humidity. I had to put my shoulder into it, shoving hard against the warped wood. It finally gave way with a groan, and I stumbled out into the alley behind the shop. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just trash bags piled against the brick wall, but trash bags didn't bleed. Trash bags didn't wear expensive Italian leather shoes or have hands covered in dark, intricate tattoos that were now stained crimson. He was slumped against the wall of my building, one hand pressed to his side where blood seeped between his fingers, dark and thick in the dim light from the single bulb above my door. His head was tilted back, eyes closed. Rain washing over a face that even in unconsciousness was striking sharp jaw, high cheekbones, dark hair plastered to his forehead. My nursing school dropout instincts kicked in before my common sense could stop me. I'd done 2 years at NYU before my mother died and the money ran out. I knew enough to recognize that this man was in serious trouble. "Hey," I called out, my voice barely audible over the rain. "Can you hear me?" His eyes opened, and even in the shadows, I could see they were dark, nearly black, intense even through obvious pain. They focused on me with an effort that made his jaw clench. "You need to leave," he said, his voice rough, accented with something Mediterranean that made each word sound almost lyrical despite the strain. "Non sicuro." "Not safe. You're bleeding," I said, which was possibly the most obvious statement I'd ever made. I knelt beside him, rain soaking through my jeans immediately. The concrete was cold and hard beneath my knees, but I ignored it. Up close, I could see the wound, a deep gash in his side, probably from a knife. The edges were clean but bleeding steadily. He needed stitches. He needed a hospital. "No hospital," he said, as if reading my mind. His hand shot out and gripped my wrist with surprising strength for someone losing blood. His fingers were warm despite the rain, and I could feel calluses on his palm. "Please. I just need," he winced, his grip loosening, "somewhere to rest. An hour, then I'll be gone." Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to call 911 and walk away. This man was clearly involved in something dangerous. The expensive clothes, the tattoos, the way he was bleeding in an alley behind my shop at midnight, none of it suggested a simple mugging gone wrong. This was something darker, something I should absolutely not involve myself in. But there was something in his eyes. Behind the pain and the obvious attempt to maintain control, there was a vulnerability that struck something deep in my chest. Maybe it was seeing Rosa in that hospital bed, looking small and fragile in a way she'd never been before. Maybe it was the fact that I'd always been the kind of person who brought home injured birds and tried to nurse them back to health. Maybe I was just an idiot. "Can you walk?" I asked. His laugh was short and pained. "I can do whatever is necessary, Bella. It's what I do." That's not an answer, I said, but I was already sliding my arm under his shoulders, helping him to his feet. He was tall, well over 6 feet and solid with muscle beneath the blood-soaked shirt. The effort of standing made him sway, and his weight pressed against me for a moment. He smelled like expensive cologne, rain copper blood, and something warm and masculine that made my pulse quicken in a way that was entirely inappropriate given the circumstances. Getting him inside was an exercise in determination and stupidity. He was too heavy to carry, so he had to help, each step clearly agony even though he made almost no sound beyond harsh breathing. I managed to get the door open and half-drag him into the back room of the shop where I kept supplies and a small table for arranging larger pieces. I cleared the table with one sweep of my arm, sending ribbon spools and wire cutters clattering to the floor. "Lie down," I ordered, surprised by the authority in my own voice. He complied, moving with a strange grace despite his injury. Once horizontal, he closed his eyes and took several deep breaths, his chest rising and falling beneath the ruined shirt. I could see more tattoos through the torn fabric, intricate designs that looked like they told a story across his skin. "I'm going to look at the wound," I said, not sure why I felt the need to announce it. Maybe because he seemed like the kind of man you asked permission from, even when he was bleeding on your flower-arranging table. "Do what you need to do," he murmured, eyes still closed. I grabbed my first aid kit from under the sink, woefully inadequate for this, but it was what I had. My hand shook slightly as I unbuttoned his shirt. The fabric was expensive, probably silk blend, completely ruined now. Underneath, his chest was muscled and covered with more tattoos, a sprawling design that looked like it started at his collarbone and disappeared beneath his waistband. Some were religious imagery, some were script in what looked like Italian, some were geometric patterns that seemed almost tribal. And there, just below his ribs, was the wound. It was deep but clean, like I'd thought. Someone had known what they were doing when they cut him. The realization made my stomach turn. This wasn't random violence. This was precise, intentional. "It needs stitches," I said quietly. "Can you do it?" His eyes were open now, watching me with an intensity that made me feel exposed, like he could see straight through to all my doubts and fears. I'm not a doctor, but you know how." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. I nodded slowly. I'd practiced sutures in nursing school, even done a few under supervision during my clinical rotation. But that was years ago, and this was so far outside anything legal or advisable that I couldn't even process it. "I need you to trust me for the next 10 minutes, I said, meeting his gaze. "And then you need to leave and never come back here, deal?" Something flickered in his dark eyes, surprise, maybe, or respect. "Deal, Violet Hayes." My blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" He gestured weakly toward the front of the shop. "It's on your sign." "And your mail is on the counter, right?" Of course, I forced myself to breathe normally and focused on the task at hand. I cleaned the wound as best I could with antiseptic, apologizing each time he tensed beneath my hands. To his credit, he made no sound beyond controlled breathing, even when I began the stitches. My hands steadied once I started working. This was something I understood: the mechanics of healing, the careful threading of needle through skin, the precise knots that would hold flesh together. I fell into the rhythm of it, blocking out everything else except the work. "You're good at this," he said softly, watching my face rather than my hands. "I wanted to be a nurse," I admitted, not sure why I was telling him. Before life got in the way. "Life has a way of doing that," he agreed. There was something in his tone that suggested he understood more than he was saying. I finished the last stitch and bandaged the wound as well as I could with what I had. "It'll hold, but you really need to see a real doctor. This could get infected, and I don't—" "You've done more than enough," he interrupted, sitting up slowly. He moved like a predator, all controlled power even when injured. "More than anyone would have. Most people would have called the police," I said, stepping back to give him space. Now that the immediate crisis was over, the reality of what I'd done was sinking in. I just stitched up a stranger in my flower shop. A stranger who had clearly been stabbed intentionally. A stranger with hands covered in tattoos that probably meant things I didn't want to know about. But not you. He slid off the table, testing his weight. He was steady, which seemed impossible given how much blood he'd lost. Why? I didn't have a good answer. "I don't know. You needed help." He studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling that he was cataloging everything about me, my worn jeans. My rain-soaked sweater, my hair falling out of its ponytail, the dirt still under my fingernails from the day's work. What's your full name? You already know it. You read my mail. Your full name, he insisted. Violet Marie Hayes. I crossed my arms, defensive. Why, instead of answering, he reached into his pocket. I tensed, half expecting a weapon, and pulled out a black card. Not credit card black, but something else entirely. Matte black, heavy stock, with only a phone number embossed in silver on one side. What is this? I asked as he pressed it into my palm. Insurance, he said simply. You did something for me tonight. Something dangerous, something kind. That deserves reciprocation. He pulled a pen from another pocket. Who carries a fountain pen while bleeding in an alley? And wrote on the back of the card an elegant script. 1 favor equals 1 million. Use when you need. And I stared at the card, then at him. This is insane. I don't want your money. You will, he said with certainty that was almost insulting. Life is expensive, Violet Hayes, and you strike me as someone who carries weight she shouldn't have to carry alone. His eyes dropped to the hospital bracelet on my wrist, the visitor's ban from seeing Rosa earlier. Family can be both our greatest blessing and our heaviest burden. You don't know anything about me, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I know you own a flower shop in Little Italy that barely breaks even. I know you visit someone in the hospital regularly enough to still be wearing yesterday's wristband. I know you're the kind of person who helps strangers bleeding in alleys instead of calling the police like any sane person would. He stepped closer, and I could smell that scent again, cologne and rain and something uniquely him. I know you're struggling and you're too proud to ask for help. But sometimes, Bella, pride is a luxury we can't afford. The words hit too close to home. I wanted to argue, to throw the card back at him and tell him to leave. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the $50,000 I didn't have. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like he actually saw me rather than through me. Who are you? I whispered. He smiled then, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. Someone who pays his debts. And now I owe you a life. He moved toward the back door with that same predatory grace. The card is real. The number works. When you need it and you will call. 1 favor equals $1 million. No strings, no obligations beyond what you choose. This is crazy, I said again, but I was still holding the card. Crazy is thinking you can save the world with flowers and kindness, he said, pausing at the door. But maybe that's what makes you dangerous, Violet Hayes. You still believe it's possible. He pulled his ruined jacket on, somehow making even that look elegant. Grazie, for my life. I won't forget it. And then he was gone, disappearing into the rain-soaked night like he'd never been there at all. Except for the blood on my hands, the medical supplies scattered across the floor, and the black card that felt impossibly heavy in my palm. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the rain and trying to process what had just happened. Finally, I cleaned up the blood, threw away the evidence, and locked up the shop properly this time. The card went into my purse, and I told myself I'd throw it away tomorrow. But I didn't. I kept it, tucked into my wallet behind my driver's license, where I could feel it every time I reached for my debit card that was perpetually close to overdraft. Where it reminded me that somewhere in the city was a dangerous man with dark eyes and a stranger accent who thought I was worth $1 million per favor. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was absolutely something I should forget about immediately. But that night, lying in my small apartment, listening to the rain finally slow to a drizzle, I pulled out the card one more time. The number gleamed silver in the lamplight. 1 favor equals 1 million. Use when you need. And for what? I wondered. What kind of man gets stabbed in an alley, gets stitched up by a flower shop owner, and leaves behind a blank check for $1 million? The kind of man I should definitely stay away from. That's what kind. I put the card back in my wallet and turned off the light. Tomorrow, I'd forget about this. Tomorrow, I'd go back to my normal life of struggling to make rent and watching my grandmother slowly fade away in a hospital I couldn't afford. Tomorrow, I'd pretend tonight never happened. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Some doors once opened can never be fully closed again. And tonight, in helping a bleeding stranger, I opened a door to something I didn't yet understand but could already feel changing everything. The card felt like a promise and a threat all at once. And despite every instinct telling me to throw it away, I knew I wouldn't. Not yet, maybe not ever. A week passed. 7 days of normal life that felt increasingly surreal. I arranged flowers, served customers, visited Rosa in the hospital, and tried to pretend that everything was fine. The card stayed in my wallet, untouched but never forgotten. Sometimes I'd feel it there, a physical weight that seemed heavier than paper and ink should be. Rosa was getting worse. The doctors were talking about moving her to hospice care if we couldn't afford the procedure soon. The words weeks, not months, had been mentioned. Each visit, she seemed smaller in that hospital bed, her skin more translucent, her breathing more labored. "You look tired, Nia," she said to me on the 7th day, her accent making the Spanish endearment sound like music despite her weakness. She'd never lost her Colombian roots. Even after 50 years in New York. "You're not sleeping." "I'm fine, abuela," I lied, holding her hand. Her fingers felt like bird bones in mine. "I'm just worried about you." "Don't worry about an old woman," she said, but her eyes were sharp, seeing through me like always. "I've had a good life." "If it's my time, it's not," I interrupted, more harshly than I intended. "You're going to be fine. We're going to figure this out." She squeezed my hand with what little strength she had. My stubborn girl. Always trying to save everyone. Her eyes closed, fatigue overtaking her. "But who saves you?" I sat there after she fell asleep, watching the monitors track her failing heart, and felt the weight of that question. Who saves me? I've been taking care of myself since I was 16. I'd put myself through school, started a business, survived in one of the most expensive cities in the world through sheer determination and pride. But pride doesn't pay for life-saving medical procedures. I pulled out my phone and the cards, staring at the number for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. One call, one favor. $1 million. It would solve everything. Rosa could have her surgery. I could save the shop. I could breathe for the first time in years. But at what cost? I thought about the man with his dark eyes and dangerous grace. The tattoos that clearly meant something in a world I didn't understand. The way he'd been stabbed with precision, like it was just another part of his life. What kind of debt would I be incurring if I called that number? My phone buzzed with a text from my landlord. The rent was late. Again, another week and he'd start eviction proceedings on the shop. I looked at Rosa, at the machines keeping her alive, at the bill on her bedside table that might as well have been a death sentence. I dialed the number. It rang once. A male voice answered, professional and crisp. "Miss Hayes, he's been expecting your call." The fact that they knew it was me without me saying anything should have terrified me. Instead, I just felt tired. "How did you— please hold." Classical music played for exactly 5 seconds. Then a different voice came on the line, and I recognized it immediately, even though I only heard it once, in pain and rain and shadow. "Violet." He said my name like he was tasting wine, savoring each syllable. "You decided to use your favor." "I need money," I said bluntly, because what was the point in dancing around it? For my grandmother. "She needs a medical procedure. $50,000. There was a pause. Then, to my shock, he laughed. It was a low, warm sound that I felt in my chest. "You saved my life, and you're asking for $50,000? That's a lot of money," I said defensively. "It's nothing," he countered. "One favor equals 1 million, Violet." Those were my terms. You could ask for 10 times what you need, and I'd give it without question. I don't need 10 times. I need 50,000. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted to something more serious. "Il denaro will be transferred to your account within the hour." "But I want something in return." My stomach clenched. Here it was. The catch. "I thought you said no strings." "Not payment," he said quickly. "A request. Have dinner with me tonight. Let me thank you properly for what you did." "Dinner," I repeated flatly. "Dinner," he confirmed. "Nothing more." "You have my word." "The word of a man who gets stabbed in alleys?" "The word of a man who always pays his debts," he corrected, and there was steel beneath the smooth tone. "And who finds himself curious about the woman brave enough to help him." I should have said no. This was already too much, too fast, too dangerous. But I thought of Rosa, of the time I'd just bought her, and the word came out before I could stop it. Okay, he echoed, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll send a car at 7, wear something nice, and Violet? Yes? Thank you. For calling." I know it wasn't easy. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, wondering what I'd just agreed to. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, a banking notification. I opened it with shaking hands. Deposit. $50,000, it was real. All of it was real. The card, the promise, the money, within the hour he'd said. It had been less than 5 minutes. I looked at Rosa, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that I'd just sold my soul or at least agreed to dinner with someone who might be the devil himself. But she'd have her surgery now, she'd live. That had to count for something, didn't it? The car that arrived at 7 was not subtle. A sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark they were probably illegal, driven by a man in a suit who opened my door without speaking. I'd spent an hour trying to figure out what something nice meant, finally settling on the one dress I owned that wasn't from a thrift store, a simple black sheath I'd bought for a friend's wedding 2 years ago. The driver said nothing as we pulled away from my apartment building in Queens, heading toward Manhattan. I watched the neighborhoods change through the window, from my working-class street to increasingly upscale blocks, until finally we pulled up in front of a restaurant I'd walked past 100 times but never dreamed of entering. Carlotta's, old-world Italian, the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance and the cheapest bottle of wine cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The driver opened my door. "He's waiting inside, Miss Hayes." I stepped out onto the sidewalk, feeling completely out of my depth. The entrance was understated, just a dark green door with brass fixtures and a small plaque. But the valet parking de Furros and Bentleys told the real story about what kind of place this was. I was halfway to the door when it opened from inside, and he was there. In the alley, bleeding and rain-soaked, he'd been striking. Here, in a perfectly tailored black suit with a charcoal shirt open at the collar, he was devastating. His dark hair was styled back, showing the sharp lines of his face. The tattoos on his hands were visible, intricate patterns that disappeared beneath his cuffs, somehow making him look more dangerous rather than less in the expensive clothes. "Violet." He said my name like a greeting and a prayer all at once. His eyes, I could see them clearly now, deep brown, almost black, with flecks of amber in the light from the restaurant swept over me with an appreciation that made heat rise in my cheeks. "You look beautiful. You look alive," I said, because my brain apparently stopped working around him. "How is the wound?" He smiled, a flash of white teeth against olive skin. "Healing perfectly, thanks to excellent care." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" I hesitated for just a moment before taking it. His arm was solid beneath my hand, warm even through the fabric of his suit. He led me inside, and I was immediately aware of the change in atmosphere. Every employee we passed straightened, their eyes dropping deferentially. The maitre d' appeared as if summoned. "Don Santoro," he said with a slight bow, an actual bow. "Your table is ready, Don Santoro." The title sent a chill down my spine even as pieces started clicking together, the respect mixed with fear. The expensive clothes. The way he'd been stabbed with such precision. The tattoos. Oh God, he must have felt me tense because his hand covered mine on his arm, gentle but firm. "Easy, Bella. We're just here for dinner." The maitre d' led us through the main dining room, all white tablecloths and candlelight and the quiet murmur of wealth, to a private room in the back. It was smaller, more intimate, with a single table set for two and windows overlooking a small courtyard garden lit with fairy lights. 2 men in dark suits stood at the entrance to the room. They had earpieces and the unmistakable bearing of bodyguards. They nodded at Nico as we passed, their eyes scanning me with professional assessment that made me feel like a potential threat. "Is this necessary?" I asked as he pulled out my chair. "Always," he said simply, taking the seat across from me. "In my world, caution is survival." And what world is that exactly? I met his eyes, done with pretending I didn't know. "Don Santoro." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. A waiter appeared with wine. I hadn't seen anyone order it, poured 2 glasses, and vanished again. "You know what that means. I grew up in Little Italy," I said. "I'm not stupid." "Don is a title." "Your family is—" I couldn't quite make myself say it out loud. "Cosa Nostra," he finished for me, his accent making the Italian words sound almost beautiful. "What you would call the Mafia, yes. My family, the Santoros, have controlled certain territories in New York for 3 generations. I am the current head of that family." He said it so casually, like he was telling me he worked in finance or real estate, which I supposed he probably did too, just not legally. The man who stabbed you, I said slowly. Was it because of this? My cousin Marco? His expression hardened, something cold entering his eyes. He believed he should lead instead of me. He was mistaken. Is he dead? Not yet. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. But he will be eventually. Such things can't be forgiven in my world. I should have stood up, should have walked out right then. But I didn't. Instead, I picked up the wine glass, noticed my hand was shaking slightly, and took a sip. It was incredible smooth and complex in a way that probably cost more per bottle than I made in a week. Why tell me this? I asked. Why not just, I don't know, pretend to be a normal businessman? Because you deserve the truth, he said simply. You saved my life. You asked for only what you needed to save someone else's. You're sitting here despite being terrified. Because you have courage most men I know lack. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I won't lie to you, Violet, not about who I am or what I do. You deserve that respect. What you do, I repeated. Which is what exactly? Many things. Some legitimate real estate, restaurants, construction, some less so. I protect my family's interests. One maintain order in our territories. I ensure loyalty through both reward and punishment. His fingers tapped the stem of his wine glass. I do what's necessary to survive in a world where weakness is death. You kill people when I must. No hesitation, no apology. But I have rules. No innocents, no children. No women who aren't in the life by choice. The men who work for me do so knowing the risks. Our enemies play by the same code. That's supposed to make it better? No, he said quietly. It's supposed to be honest. The waiter returned with appetizers I hadn't ordered burrata with heirloom tomatoes. Prosciutto so thin it was translucent, bread that smelled like heaven. Nico waited until we were alone again before continuing. I grew up in this life, he said, tearing off a piece of bread. My father was doomed before me. His father before him. I had no choice in what I became, but I choose how I do it. With honor, with respect for the old ways. With protection for those who can't protect themselves. Like me? You don't need protection, Bella. You need support, there's a difference. He met my eyes. The money I gave you, it's yours, no conditions. You owe me nothing. But I'd like to continue knowing you if you'll allow it. Why? The question came out almost as a whisper. Because in 20 years of this life, no one has ever helped me without wanting something in return. No one has ever looked at me like I was worth saving rather than using. His voice softened. You didn't see Don Santoro bleeding in that alley. You saw a man who needed help. Do you know how rare that is? I didn't know what to say to that. The food sat between us, delicious and untouched, while I tried to process everything he was telling me. This was insane. I was having dinner with a mob boss who was openly admitting to murder, extortion, and God knows what else. I should be running. But there was something in his eyes that stopped me. A loneliness I recognized because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. A weariness with the role he'd been forced into. Hunger for something real in a world built on lies and violence. Tell me about your grandmother, he said, changing the subject with surprising gentleness. Rosa, yes? The hospital bracelet. I found myself talking, telling him about how she'd raised me after my mother died. How she'd worked 2 jobs to make sure I could go to school, how she'd taught me to love growing things. He listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he was paying attention. He wanted to know about the flower shop, about why I'd chosen that path, about what made me happy. We ate and the food was incredible pasta made fresh. Sauces that tasted like they'd been simmering for days, meat that melted on the tongue. He told me about growing up in a big Italian family, about his mother who still made Sunday dinner for 20 people every week, about learning the family business alongside his schoolwork. I was 12 when I fully understood what my father did, he said, twirling pasta on his fork with the ease of long practice. We were at a restaurant much like this one. A man came to our table and begged for mercy. He'd betrayed my father, stolen from the family. My father listened to his pleas, then had him dragged outside and beaten until he couldn't walk. That's horrible, I breathed. It was necessary, Nico corrected. The man knew the rules. He broke them anyway. If my father had shown weakness, others would have followed. In our world, mercy is often cruelty in disguise. He paused. But what I remember most was my father afterward. He came home and cried in his study. My mother held him while he said over and over, I had no choice. I had no choice. That's when I understood this life takes as much as it gives. Power comes with a price, and you chose to pay it anyway. I chose to protect what my grandfather built, what my father died for. I chose family even when it meant becoming someone I'm not sure I like very much. He reached across the table, his tattooed hand covering mine. But then I meet someone like you who lives in the real world, who chooses kindness over profit, who saves lives instead of taking them. And I remember that there's more to existence than power and control. His hand was warm, the touch sending electricity up my arm. I should pull away. I should thank him for dinner and leave. I should definitely not be feeling this pull toward a man who just admitted to ordering beatings and worse. But I didn't pull away. The card, I said instead. You said 1 favor equals 1 million. Why? Because that's what your kindness is worth to me, he said simply. Every favor you call in, I pay. No questions, no strings. You need money for your grandmother's care? It's yours. You need your shop saved. Done. Someone threatens you? They disappear. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of my hand. You gave me my life back. I'm giving you security in return. I don't want people to disappear, I said quickly. He smiled. Then ask for something else. The card is yours, Violet. Use it as you see fit, or don't use it at all. The choice is always yours. You still have millions in favors available, he continued. But I understand if you want nothing more to do with me after tonight. This world, my world, it's not for everyone. It's dangerous, morally complicated, and it requires accepting things most people can't stomach. He was giving me an out. A clean exit. All I had to do was finish dinner, let his driver take me home, and never call that number again. Rose's surgery was paid for. I owed him nothing. But then I thought about the way he looked at me when I found him bleeding like I was something precious. The way he listened when I talked about flowers like my small dreams mattered as much as his empire. The loneliness in his eyes that matched my own. Is the card still valid? I heard myself ask, echoing his words from that rainy night. His smile was slow, transforming his face from dangerous to devastating. Always Bella. For as long as you want it to be. I didn't hear from Nico for 3 days after that dinner. Part of me was relieved it gave me time to process everything, to convince myself that I'd imagined the connection, the electricity. The way his eyes had tracked my every movement like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Rose's surgery was scheduled for the following week. The hospital staff treated me differently now that payment was guaranteed more smiles. More attention, the best doctors assigned to her case. I didn't ask how the money had appeared in my account or whose name was attached to it. I'd learned quickly that in Nico's world, some questions were better left unasked. The flower shop continued its usual rhythm. I had a wedding on Saturday, 200 white roses and peonies for a ceremony in Central Park. I was in the back room, carefully assembling the bouquets when the bell over the front door chimed. Be right there, I called, finishing the ribbon on a bridesmaid's bouquet before heading to the front. Nico stood by the counter, looking entirely out of place among the pastel blooms and delicate vases. He wore dark jeans and a black Henley today, more casual than the suit, but no less impressive. The tattoos on his hands and the hint of more at his collar made him look dangerous, even surrounded by flowers. Nico, his name came out breathier than I intended. Violet? He smiled, and it was warmer than last time, less guarded. I need flowers. For your mother, I said, remembering what he'd said at dinner. You remember. He looked pleased. Yes, for my mother. She likes traditional arrangements, roses, carnations. Something classic. I moved behind the counter, grateful for something to do with my hands. What's the occasion? Sunday dinner, he said. It's a tradition. Every week, the whole family gathers at our house. She cooks enough for an army, everyone argues in Italian. And if you don't eat at least 3 plates of pasta, she takes it as a personal insult. I found myself smiling at the image. That sounds nice. Loud, but nice. It is. He watched me select roses from the cooler, his eyes tracking my movements. You should come this week. My hands stilled. What? Sunday dinner? You should come. He said it casually, but there was tension in his shoulders that suggested the invitation wasn't as casual as he was pretending. My mother would like you. She's always saying I need to meet nice girls. You're the nicest person I know. I don't think showing up to a family dinner with a mob boss is a good idea, I said, trying to keep my tone light even as my heart raced. Why not? He leaned against the counter, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that made me want to lean in. You saved my life. In Italian families, that makes you practically family yourself. Besides, I promise my mother is much less dangerous than I am. That's not reassuring. It should be. In my family, women run everything that matters. My mother, my sisters, my Aunt Valentina, they're the real power. We men just pretend to be in charge. His expression softened. Come, let them meet you. Let me show you that my world isn't all darkness and violence. There's family too, loyalty, love. I should say no. This was getting too complicated, too real. But something in his eyes of vulnerability he was trying to hide behind casual confidence made me hesitate. I don't speak Italian. Neither does half my family anymore. We're third generation, Bella. More American than Italian, even if we pretend otherwise. He reached across the counter, his fingers brushing mine as I handed him the roses. Please, one Sunday dinner. If you hate it, I'll never ask again. And if I don't hate it? His smile was slow and absolutely sinful. Then maybe you'll come back. And maybe we'll figure out what this thing between us actually is. There's a thing between us? I asked, even though I knew the answer. You know there is. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the public setting. I thought about you every day since that night. The way you didn't hesitate to help me. The way you looked at my world and didn't run. The way you feel like something real in a life built on lies. My breath caught. Nico, Sunday, he interrupted gently. 2:00. I'll send a car. I can drive myself. The car is safer. My mother lives in a neighborhood where strange cars get noticed. If you arrive in my car, they'll know you're with me. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most normal thing in the world to need mob-adjacent transportation to a family dinner. This is crazy, I whispered. Probably, he agreed. But you're still going to say yes. He was right, and we both knew it. Fine, Sunday, 2:00. His smile could have lit up the entire city. Wear something comfortable. My mother's house is not a place for formal clothes. And Violet? He paused at the door, roses in hand. Thank you. For taking a chance on someone like me. He left before I could respond, the bell chiming cheerfully in his wake. I stood there, surrounded by flowers and the lingering scent of his cologne, wondering what I'd just agreed to. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, looking forward to Sunday. And I saved the number, my thumb hovering over his name in my contacts. Nico Santoro. Mob boss, murderer, the man who'd given me $50,000 without blinking. The man who looked at me like I was precious. The man who was slowly, inexorably pulling me into a world I didn't understand. A world I was increasingly certain I wanted to be part of, despite every logical reason to run. The card sat in my wallet, a constant reminder that I could still call in favors. But as I finished the wedding bouquets and locked up the shop for the night, I realized something that should have terrified me but somehow didn't. I didn't want Nico's money or his power or his protection. I just wanted him. And that was far more dangerous than anything else he could offer. Sunday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I changed clothes 4 times before settling on dark jeans, a soft lavender sweater, and simple flats. Comfortable, he'd said. Not formal. I told myself this was just dinner with a friend's family, even though my racing heart knew it was so much more. The car arrived at exactly 2:00, a different Mercedes, same tinted windows, same silent driver. We drove out of Manhattan into Queens, into a neighborhood where the houses had yards and the streets had trees. Old world Italian, where grandmothers still hung laundry on clotheslines and men played bocce in the park. The house we stopped at was larger than its neighbors, well-maintained with a manicured lawn and flower boxes in the windows. Before I could second-guess myself, the front door opened and Nico appeared. He looked different here, more relaxed in jeans and a simple black t-shirt that showed his tattooed arms. His face lit up when he saw me and he jogged down the steps to open my car door personally. You came, he said, and there was relief in his voice that suggested he'd been worried I wouldn't. I said I would. People say a lot of things. He offered his hand to help me out of the car. I'm glad you're not people. He kept my hand as we walked up to the house, his thumb absently stroking my knuckles. Fair warning, it's going to be loud. My mother invited everyone. And by everyone, I mean my 3 sisters, 2 brothers-in-law, 4 nephews, 2 nieces. Aunt Valentina, Uncle Marco, the good one, not the one who stabbed me, and probably half the neighborhood. That's a lot of people, I said, panic rising. They're going to love you, he assured me. Trust me. The moment we walked through the door, I was hit by a wall of noise and delicious smells. The house was full of people everywhere, kids running. Multiple conversations in English and Italian happening simultaneously, the TV playing a soccer match in the background. A tiny woman with dark hair going silver appeared from what I assumed was the kitchen. She was barely 5 feet tall, but she radiated authority. Her eyes, the same dark brown as Nucko's, locked onto me immediately. Mama, Miko said, switching to a more respectful tone. This is Violet Hayes. Violet, my mother, Maria Santoro. Mrs. Santoro, I started, offering my hand. It's lovely to meet. I was pulled into a hug before I could finish, enveloped in warmth and the scent of garlic and tomatoes. Violet, finally my Nico brings a nice girl to dinner. Her English was accented but clear. You call me Maria, yes, or Mama like my children? Come, you're too skinny. We feed you. She bustled me toward the kitchen before I could respond, talking the entire way. Miko followed, grinning at my overwhelmed expression. The kitchen was enormous, filled with pots bubbling on the stove, trays of food covering every surface, and more people cooking, chopping, stirring. Everyone, Maria announced. This is Violet, Nico's ragazza. Not my ragazza, Mama, Nico corrected, but he was smiling. We're friends, Maria scoffed, swatting his arm. Friends he brings to Sunday dinner. Friends he talks about every day for 3 weeks. See, friends. You talk about me? I asked Nico quietly as Maria was pulled away by an aunt demanding her opinion on the sauce. Apparently I'm not subtle, he admitted. 3 sisters means nothing stays private in this family. One of those sisters appeared then tall, beautiful with the same dark eyes and coloring as Nico. So you're the flower shop girl. I'm Gianna, Nako's favorite sister. I'm his only favorite sister, another woman said, appearing with a toddler on her hip. Isabella. And this is Marco Jr., who's trying to eat his own fist. The 3rd sister was quieter, observing me with sharp intelligence. Francesca, she introduced herself. And before you ask, yes, we've all been dying to meet the woman who has our brother actually smiling for once. I smile, Miko protested. You smirk, Gianna corrected. There's a difference. This, she gestured at his face, is actual smiling. It's weird. I couldn't help but laugh, and the sisters immediately warmed to me. They pulled me into the organized chaos of final dinner preparations. Asking questions about the shop, about how I met Nico, he'd clearly told them some sanitized version about my family. When I mentioned Rosa and her upcoming surgery, the mood shifted. The sisters exchanged looks, and Maria appeared from nowhere to take my hands. Your Nona, she said seriously. She is strong? Very, I confirmed. She raised me after my mother died. Maria's eyes softened with understanding. Then she's a fighter. Like you, I think. She patted my cheek. Good, Nico needs someone who fights. Someone who doesn't accept his brooding. I don't brood, Nico said from across the kitchen. You absolutely brood, all 3 sisters said in unison. Dinner was announced by Maria ringing a bell, and everyone migrated to a dining room that had been extended with folding tables to accommodate the crowd. I found myself seated between Nico and his Aunt Valentina, a formidable woman in her 60s who'd apparently been the Santoro, housekeeper for 40 years and knew where all the bodies were buried. Literally, possibly. So, Valentina said to me as plates of antipasto appeared. You're the one who saved my Nico's life. I glanced at Nico, who was suddenly very interested in his wine. I just helped him when he was hurt. In the alley behind your shop, Valentina continued. After Marco that little shit, excuse my language, after he stabbed him. She said it so matter-of-factly, as if attempted murder by family was just another minor inconvenience. Most people would have called the police or run away. You didn't either. I'm not sure that was smart, I admitted. Smart is overrated, she declared. Kind is better. And you were kind to someone who didn't deserve it, who couldn't repay you, who you owed nothing to. That tells me about your character, girl. The food kept coming: pasta in 3 different sauces, chicken cacciatore, sausages and peppers, salads, bread, wine. Maria insisted I try everything, loading my plate herself. Around me, conversations flowed in both languages. Kids ran around despite their parents' attempts at discipline, and laughter rang out constantly. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and so different from my quiet dinners alone in my apartment. Nico's hand found mine under the table during the main course. Just a gentle squeeze, like he wanted to make sure I was okay. I squeezed back, and his smile was worth every moment of awkwardness. After dinner, while the women began the massive cleanup operation, despite the men's protests that they could help, Nico pulled me outside to the back garden. It was small but well-maintained, with a stone patio and herbs growing in neat rows. "How are you holding up?" he asked, leaning against the patio railing. "Your family is wonderful," I said honestly. "Loud but wonderful. They liked you. My mother already told me 3 times that I better not let this one get away, as if you're a fish I caught." "Maybe I am," I said, surprising myself with the boldness. "Maybe you caught me that night in the alley, and I've been hooked ever since." His eyes darkened, his gaze intense. "Violet, Don Santoro." A man appeared from inside 30s, expensive suit, the kind of sharp-eyed weariness that screamed bodyguard or soldier. "Sorry to interrupt. We have a situation." Nico's entire demeanor changed. The relaxed family man disappeared, replaced by someone harder and more dangerous. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that needs your attention, now." Nico's jaw clenched. He turned to me, and I could see him struggling between duty and desire. "I'm sorry." "I have to." "Go," I said, understanding even if I didn't want to. "I'll be fine here. Anthony will drive you home when you're ready." He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat spiraling through me. "I'll call you later." "I promise." And then he was gone, disappearing into the house with the bodyguard, leaving me alone in the garden with the sounds of his family and the lingering warmth of his lips on my skin. Valentina found me a few minutes later. He had to go, I figured. She handed me an espresso in a tiny cup. That's the life, girl. Family dinners interrupted by business. Phone calls at 3 a.m. Weeks where you don't see him because he's handling things you can't ask about. She sipped her own espresso. "The question is whether you can handle it." "I don't know," I admitted. "This is also new, so fast. A month ago, I didn't know he existed. Now I'm at his family dinner, and he's paying for my grandmother's surgery, and I can't stop thinking about him even though I know I should run far away." "But you're not running." "No." "Good." Valentina's smile was approving. "Because that boy needs someone real in his life. Someone who sees him, not just the power or the money or the danger." "You see him, don't you?" I thought about Nico bleeding in the alley, vulnerable and human. Nico at dinner, making his mother laugh. Nico's hand finding mine under the table like I was his anchor in the chaos. "Yes," I whispered. "I see him. Then the rest we figure out as we go." She patted my arm. "Come, I'll introduce you to Maria's famous tiramisu. And then we'll get Anthony to drive you home before Nico calls 6 times to make sure you got there safely." She was right. By the time Anthony dropped me at my apartment in a different car, always a different car, I'd learned my phone had 3 missed calls and 5 texts from Nico. I called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Are you home?" His voice was tight with tension. "Just walked in." Anthony was a perfect gentleman. "Good." I heard him breathe out slowly. "I'm sorry I had to leave. Business needed handling." "It's okay. Your family was wonderful. Your mother made me promise to come back next week." "You don't have to." "I want to," I interrupted. "If that's okay." Silence. Then softly, "It's more than okay, Bella. It's everything." We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. He told me about growing up in that house, about Sunday dinners that had been happening since he was a child, about his father who died when Nico was 25 and left him to take over the family too young. I told him about Rosa, about my mother's death, about the flower shop and my dreams and my fears. He listened like every word mattered, like my small life was as important as his empire. When we finally hung up, it was past midnight. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what was happening. I was falling for a mob boss. A man who ordered violence, who existed in a world of codes and loyalty and danger I couldn't fully comprehend. But I was also falling for a man who loved his mother's cooking, who lit up around his nieces and nephews, who held my hand under the table and called me late at night just to make sure I was safe. The question Valentina had asked echoed in my mind. Could I handle this life? I didn't know the answer. But I knew I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet, maybe not ever. The next 2 weeks fell into a pattern that felt both surreal and strangely normal. Nico came to the flower shop almost daily, always with some excuse flowers for his mother, for a business meeting, for a funeral. I knew he was checking on me, making sure I was safe, but I didn't mind. Each visit felt like stolen moments from his dangerous world, time when he could just be a man buying flowers instead of a don commanding an empire. Rosa's surgery was scheduled for Friday. The best cardiac surgeon in New York, a private room, round-the-clock nursing care all arranged and paid for before I even knew the details. When I tried to thank Nico, he'd simply said, "You used your favor." I'm honoring our agreement, but it felt like more than an agreement now. It felt like he genuinely cared. Thursday night, the night before the surgery, I was closing up the shop when I heard the bell chime. I looked up from counting the register to find not Nico, but a man I didn't recognize. 40s, expensive suit, cold eyes that assessed me like I was merchandise. Violet Hayes? His voice was smooth, educated, with no trace of accent. "We're closed," I said, my hand instinctively moving toward my phone. "I'm not here for flowers." He stepped closer and every instinct screamed danger. "I'm here to deliver a message." From Marco Santoro. My blood ran cold. Marco, the cousin who'd stabbed Nico. The one Nico had said would eventually die for his betrayal. "I don't know who that is," I lied. "Of course you do. You're fucking his cousin. Or you will be soon enough." His smile was cruel. "Marco wants you to know that Nico's protection only extends so far." "That pretty little grandmother of yours? The one having surgery tomorrow? Would be a shame if something happened." "Medical errors occur all the time." Fear turned to rage so fast it surprised me. "You're threatening my grandmother?" "I'm delivering a message," he corrected. "What you do with it is your business." "But Marco suggests you distance yourself from Nico, for your own safety." "And your family's." He turned to leave and something in me snapped. "Tell Marco," I said, my voice shaking with fury instead of fear, "that if anything happens to my grandmother, I'll make sure Nico knows exactly who to blame. And I have a feeling that won't end well for Marco." The man paused, looking back with something like respect. "You've got balls, flower girl. That might keep you alive. Or it might get you killed faster." He shrugged. Either way, message delivered. He left, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him like he'd just bought a bouquet instead of threatening my family. I stood there, shaking my hands, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I should call the police. But what would I say? A man threatened my grandmother on behalf of a mob boss? They'd laugh at me. Or worse, they'd start asking questions about my relationship with Nico that I couldn't answer. I called Neko instead. He answered immediately. "Violet, what's wrong?" "How do you know something's wrong?" "Because you never call me." "You always wait for me to call you." His voice sharpened. "What happened?" I told him everything, my voice only wavering slightly when I got to the part about Rosa. By the time I finished, I could hear him moving, doors opening and closing, his tone clipped as he gave orders to someone. "Where are you right now?" he demanded. "Still at the shop. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in." "I'm sending Anthony." "He'll be there in 5 minutes." "Nico, I'm fine." "You're not fine." "Marco just threatened you, which means he knows about you, which means you're in danger." I heard a car engine start. I should have anticipated this. "I should have protected you better." "I don't need protection," I started, but he cut me off. "Yes, you do." "Because this is my world, Violet, and in my world, people use the things I care about against me." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough. "And I care about you. More than I should, more than is smart, but I do. So you're going to let Anthony take you somewhere safe, and you're going to stay there until I handle Marco. Understood?" "My grandmother's surgery is tomorrow. Will happen exactly as planned, with a security team that won't let anyone within 50 feet of her room who isn't authorized medical personnel." His tone left no room for argument. "Should be safer than the president. But you need to be safe too." Anthony arrived exactly 5 minutes later, along with 2 other men who positioned themselves by the doors. "Miss Hayes," Anthony said with a respectful nod. He was older than Nico, maybe 45, with graying hair and the calm competence of someone who'd seen everything. If you'll come with me, where are we going? Somewhere safe, that turned out to be a penthouse apartment in Tribeca with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was sleek and modern, with minimalist furniture and art that probably cost more than my entire shop. Anthony showed me around briefly. Kitchen fully stocked, bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, a second bedroom if I needed it. This is Nico's place? I asked, taking in the space. It felt like him, somehow sophisticated but not ostentatious, powerful but controlled. One of them, Anthony confirmed. He'll be here soon. In the meantime, you're completely safe. The building has security. The elevator requires a key to access this floor. And Marco doesn't know about this property. How many properties does he have that Marco doesn't know about? Anthony's smile was slight. Enough. Can I get you anything? Food, wine? Answers, I said, sinking onto the leather couch. How bad is this, really? He considered me for a moment, seeming to weigh how much to say. Marco is desperate. He tried to take control and failed. Now he's marked for death. It's just a matter of time. Desperate men do stupid things. Threatening you was stupid. Why? Because Neko will destroy him for it. Not quickly, not cleanly, completely. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. You should know what you're getting into, Miss Hayes. Nico is a good man by our standards. He has honor. He protects his people. He doesn't hurt innocents. But he's also absolutely ruthless when someone threatens what's his. And he considers you his. I'm not his, I protested weakly. Anthony's look was almost pitying. You saved his life. You welcomed him into yours despite knowing what he is. You met his family. You let him protect you. He headed toward the door. In our world, that's as good as a marriage proposal. Whether you realize it or not, you're his. The only question is whether you're willing to be. He left me alone with that thought in a city view that cost more per month than I made in a year. I tried to distract myself, explored the apartment. Found Neko's bedroom with its massive bed and walk-in closet full of expensive suits. Discovered a library with books in Italian and English. I was examining a first edition of The Godfather when I heard the elevator. Nico stepped out, and I could see the barely controlled violence in every line of his body. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hands showing fresh bruises on the knuckles. He saw me and stopped, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You're okay, he said, and it sounded like a prayer. I'm fine, are you? I gestured to his hands. He glanced down like he'd forgotten about them. Marco's men won't be delivering any more messages. Marco himself. His jaw clenched. I'm handling it, Nico. He threatened you, Violet. He threatened your grandmother. He crossed to where I stood, cupping my face in his bruised hands with surprising gentleness. Do you understand what that means? In my world, that's a death sentence. Not because of some code or rule, but because I can't. His voice cracked slightly. I can't let anyone hurt you. I won't. I'm not afraid, I said, and realized it was true. I should be terrified of Marco, of this world, of the violence simmering beneath Neko's controlled surface. But all I felt was safe, protected, cherished. You should be, he said roughly. You should run from me as fast as you can. Go back to your flowers and your normal life and forget you ever met me. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What's safe for you? I kissed him. Grabbed his collar and pulled him down and pressed my lips to his, cutting off whatever noble self-sacrifice he was about to make. For a heartbeat, he froze. Then he was kissing me back, one hand sliding into my hair, the other wrapping around my waist, pulling me against him with a hunger that made my knees weak. He tasted like mint and danger and something uniquely him. The kiss was everything I'd imagined and nothing like I'd expected, gentle and fierce. Controlled and desperate, a contradiction that somehow made perfect sense. His thumb stroked my cheekbone while his tongue traced my lower lip, asking permission I granted immediately. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Violet, he whispered. What are you doing to me? The same thing you're doing to me, I admitted, making me want things I shouldn't want. Making me feel safe in a dangerous world. Making me fall for you even though I know better. I'm not a good man, he warned. You're good enough for me. His laugh was shaky. You say that now. Wait until you see what I'm capable of. What I'll do to Marco for threatening you. Will it keep my grandmother safe? Yes. Then do what you need to do. I met his eyes, letting him see that I meant it. I'm not naive, Nico. I know what you are, what you do. But I also know you're a man who loves his mother, who plays with his nieces and nephews, who spent $50,000 without blinking to save a stranger's grandmother. You're complicated. But you're not evil. You might be the only person who thinks that. Then I'll think it loud enough for both of us. He kissed me again, slower this time, thorough and devastating. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise. Your grandmother's surgery is at 8 a.m. I'll have a car pick you up at 7. Anthony will be with her the entire time, along with 3 other men. No one gets near her who isn't supposed to be there. And Marco? Will be dealt with before then. The coldness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel protected. Stay here tonight, please. I need to know you're safe. Where will you be? Handling business. He traced my jaw with one finger. But I'll be back before morning. And when your grandmother is out of surgery and safe, when Marco is no longer a threat, we're going to talk about this, about us, about what happens next. Okay, I whispered. He left reluctantly with one more kiss that promised things we didn't have time for yet. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone in his penthouse, surrounded by his things, marked by his kiss, and absolutely certain that my life would never be the same. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept checking my phone for updates, but there was nothing. At 4 a.m., I heard the elevator and tensed, but it was just Nico returning. He looked exhausted. His shirt had blood on it that I didn't think was his, but his eyes were clearer. It's done, was all he said. I didn't ask for details. I just took his hand and led him to his bedroom, helped him out of the ruined shirt, and lay down beside him on top of the covers. He pulled me close, burying his face in my hair, and fell asleep almost immediately. I watched the sun rise over the city, held in the arms of a man who'd just killed for me, and tried to figure out what that said about who I was becoming. Rose's surgery went perfectly. I sat in the waiting room with Anthony standing silently nearby, watching families come and go, and tried not to think about where Nico was or what he'd done last night. When the surgeon came out with a smile and the news that everything had gone well, I cried with relief. She's strong, the doctor said. Recovery will take time, but she should make a full return to normal activities. I was allowed to see her briefly. She was still groggy from anesthesia, but she squeezed my hand and smiled. My strong girl, she murmured. Always taking care of everyone. Just get better, abuela, I said, kissing her forehead. That's all I need. Anthony drove me back to the penthouse where I found Nico waiting. He'd showered and changed, looking nothing like the exhausted, blood-stained man from early morning. But I could see the tension in his shoulders. Your grandmother? He asked immediately. Perfect. The doctor said the surgery went perfectly. I crossed him, and he pulled me into his arms without hesitation. Thank you. For everything. You don't need to thank me, Bella. I told you your favor was honored, but his arms tightened around me. I'm just glad she's safe. That you're safe. And Marco? Is no longer a problem. The finality in his tone told me everything I needed to know. Marco Santoro was dead. Nico had killed him or ordered it done, and there was no regret in his voice. I should feel something about that. Horror maybe, or disgust. But all I felt was relief that the threat was gone. What does that make me? I asked quietly. That I'm glad you killed him? Human, Nico said simply. He threatened your family. Wanting him gone doesn't make you a monster, Violet. It makes you someone who protects what she loves. What she loves. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I need to tell you something, he said, pulling back enough to see my face. About my world, about what being with me means. You deserve to know everything before you make a choice. We sat on the couch and he talked, really talked. About his family's history, how his grandfather had come from Sicily with nothing and built an empire through violence and cunning. How his father had tried to legitimize some of the businesses while maintaining the traditional operations. How Nico had inherited the position at 25 when his father was killed by a rival family. I didn't want this life, he admitted. I wanted to be an architect, did you know that? I was going to design buildings, create something beautiful and permanent. His laugh was bitter. Instead, I got an empire built on blood and fear. But you could have left, I said. You could have walked away. And leave my family vulnerable? Leave my mother and sisters at the mercy of men like Marco? He shook his head. In our world, there's no walking away. The only way out is death. So I became what I had to become. I learned to be ruthless when necessary, strategic always, and absolutely loyal to family. He told me about the businesses, the legitimate ones like restaurants and construction companies, and the illegal ones like gambling, loan sharking, protection rackets. About the territories they controlled and the other families they had to negotiate with. About the violence that was sometimes necessary to maintain order. I have rules, he said. No drugs, I won't poison my own community. No human trafficking women and children are off limits. No killing innocents. But beyond that, he met my eyes. I do what I have to do to protect what's mine. And that includes violence, Violet. That includes things that would horrify most people. And if I can't accept that, I asked quietly. Pain flashed across his face. Then I let you go. With enough money to be comfortable forever, with protection to make sure no one from this world ever touches you, and with the knowledge that you were the only thing in 20 years that made me want to be better than I. That's a lot of pressure, I said, trying to lighten the mood. It's the truth. He took my hands in his. I'm not a good man by normal standards, Bella, but for you, I would try to be. I would be whatever you needed me to be. I thought about the last month. About finding him bleeding in an alley and making the choice to help. About the black card and the impossible promise it represented. About Sunday dinners and his mother's tiramisu and the way his whole family had welcomed me without question. About the way he looked at me like I was precious. The way he kissed me like I was air and he was drowning. I don't need you to be different, I said finally. I need you to be honest. I need you to keep your world separate from mine when you can. I need you to promise that you'll never ask me to compromise who I am for what you do. I promise, he said immediately. Your shop, your life, they stay clean, separate, sacred. And I need you to understand that I can't be part of your business. I can't know details. I can't be involved in decisions. What you do in that world stays there. Agreed. But, I continued, my heart pounding, I can be part of your life. The real parts. The family dinners and late-night phone calls and stolen moments in flower shops. Hope lit up his face. I'm saying I choose you, I interrupted. With full knowledge of what that means. I choose you, Nico Santoro. The good and the bad and the complicated. All of it. He kissed me then, deep and slow and full of promise. When we came up for air, he pressed his forehead to mine. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this choice. That's a long time, I teased. Not long enough, he said seriously. Not nearly long enough for everything I want to do with you. We spent the rest of the day wrapped up in each other, talking and kissing and learning. I learned that he liked his coffee black and strong, that he had a scar on his shoulder from a fight when he was 16, that he spoke 3 languages fluently. He learned that I was ticklish behind my knees, that I sang off-key when I was happy, that I'd never been out of New York State. We'll fix that, he murmured against my neck, his lips tracing patterns on my skin that made me shiver. I'll take you everywhere. Paris, Rome, the Amalfi Coast where my grandmother was born. That sounds expensive. I'm rich, Bella. Obscenely, almost offensively rich. Let me spoil you. I don't want your money, I protested, but my heart wasn't in it. Not when his hands were doing distracting things and his mouth was making promises against my collarbone. Then let me give you experiences instead. Let me show you the world. Let me give you everything you've been too busy surviving to dream about. When he put it like that, how could I say no? The next 3 months were the happiest of my life. We fell into a rhythm. Nika would come to the shop in the mornings. We'd have coffee together before he went to handle his business. Afternoons were mine, running the shop, visiting Rosa as she recovered. Evenings were ours, sometimes at his penthouse, sometimes at restaurants where everyone knew him, sometimes just walking through the city talking about everything and nothing. He kept his promise about separation. I never knew details about his business, never met his associates beyond Anthony, never saw the violence that I knew still existed in his world. It was compartmentalized perfectly Don Santoro in one box, Nico in another, and I only had access to the second one. Sunday dinners became my favorite tradition. Maria had fully adopted me, teaching me to make pasta from scratch and sharing stories about Neko as a child. His sisters treated me like I'd always been part of the family. Even his brothers-in-law, who definitely knew what Nico did for a living, welcomed me with open arms. "You're good for him," Valentina told me one Sunday while we were doing dishes. "I haven't seen him this light in years, maybe ever." "He's good for me too," I admitted. I didn't realize how lonely I was until I wasn't anymore. Rosa was released from the hospital after 2 weeks, stronger than she'd been in years. Nico had arranged for a beautiful apartment for her, nothing ostentatious, but comfortable and close to mine. She'd met him exactly once, when he came to help move her in and afterward pulled me aside. "That man is in love with you," she said bluntly. "Abuela, don't abuela me." "I see how he looks at you, like you're the most precious thing in the world. Like he burned down the city to keep you safe." She studied my face. "And you love him too?" "Yes," I whispered. "I do." "Good. Life is too short to waste on anything less than that kind of love." She patted my cheek. "Just promise me one thing." "Anything. Don't lose yourself in him. Keep your shop, your dreams, your independence. Love him, but stay you." That's what he fell in love with in the first place. Her words stayed with me. A reminder that even in this all-consuming relationship, I needed to maintain my own identity. So I did. The shop actually started thriving, whether from word of mouth or from Nico's subtle influence. I didn't ask. I hired a part-time employee, a young woman named Sophie, who was getting her degree in horticulture. I started teaching workshops on flower arranging. I built something that was mine, separate from Nico's world, but the nights were his. And mine, and ours. 3 months in, he asked me to move into the penthouse. I said no, not ready to give up my small apartment with its independence and familiarity. He accepted it without argument, but the disappointment in his eyes hurt. "I'm not saying never," I explained. "I'm saying not yet. This is all still so new, and I need to know I can stand on my own, that I'm choosing you every day instead of just falling into your orbit." "I understand," he said, and I could tell he genuinely did. "Take all the time you need, Bella. I'm not going anywhere." 4 months in, we had our first real fight. A supplier I'd worked with for years suddenly canceled my account without explanation. When I asked Nico about it, because I knew, somehow I knew he admitted that the supplier had been running an illegal operation on the side and he'd shut it down. "You had no right," I said, furious. "That was my business, my supplier relationship. You promised to keep our worlds separate." "He was using your deliveries to transport stolen goods," Nico countered. "If the police had caught on, you would have been implicated. I was protecting you, without telling me, without giving me the choice. Because you would have tried to handle it yourself and put yourself in danger." His voice rose to match mine. I won't stand by while you walk into a situation that could destroy you. That's my decision to make." We stared at each other, both breathing hard, both too stubborn to back down. Finally, Nico ran a hand through his hair and took a breath. "You're right," he said quietly. "I overstepped. I should have told you what I discovered and let you decide how to handle it." He crossed to where I stood, stopping just short of touching me. "I'm sorry. I'm so used to making decisions and having them followed that I forgot you're not my employee or my subordinate. You're my equal, my partner. And I need to treat you that way." The fight drained out of me at his words. "I know you were trying to protect me. I need to feel like I have control over my own life even when I'm with someone as powerful as you." "You do," he assured me. "I'll do better. I promise." We made up thoroughly after that, learning each other's boundaries, negotiating the complicated dance of two independent people building something together. 5 months in, Anthony was shot. It happened during what should have been a routine meeting. A rival family, the Carbones, decided to make a move on Centauro territory. Anthony took 2 bullets protecting Nico, who called me from the hospital with a voice I'd never heard before, shaken and young and scared. I left the shop immediately, drove to the hospital breaking probably a dozen traffic laws, and found Nico in the surgical waiting room. His shirt was stained with Anthony's blood, his hand shaking as he gripped a styrofoam cup of coffee. "Violet." He stood when he saw me and I went straight into his arms. He held on like I was the only thing keeping him upright. "They don't know if he'll make it." The bullets hit his lung and liver. "He's been in surgery for 3 hours. I held him while he talked, letting him process aloud. Anthony was more than an employee, he was family. He'd been with Nako's father before Nico, had been there when Nako took over, had been the steady hand guiding a 25-year-old suddenly responsible for an empire. If he dies, Nico said roughly, it's my fault. He was protecting me. He always protects me. Then honor that, I said firmly. Don't fall apart. Be the leader he believes you are. Be the man worth protecting. He pulled back to look at me, something like awe in his eyes. How do you always know exactly what I need to hear? Because I know you, I said simply. Anthony survived the surgery. Recovery would be long, but he'd live. Nico's relief was palpable, but so was his anger. The Carbones had crossed a line, and I knew everyone knew that there would be retaliation. I need to handle this, he told me that night at the penthouse. We hadn't left the hospital until Anthony was out of surgery and stable. It's going to get ugly, Violet. I need you to stay out of it completely. I was always going to stay out of it, I pointed out. That's our agreement. I mean, really out of it. Don't come to Sunday dinner for a few weeks. Don't let anyone know where you live or work beyond what they already know. Consider hiring security for the shop. Fear crept up my spine. How bad is this going to get? Bad enough that I can't guarantee your safety if you're visible as someone I care about. He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. The Carbones know about you now. They saw Anthony protecting me at the meeting, and my people have been at your shop too often. They might try to use you against me. So what do? You go to ground for a few weeks. Stay with your grandmother, or I can arrange a place outside the city. I'll handle the Carbones, and when it's over, things go back to normal. And if it doesn't go the way you want? His jaw tightened. Then he used the card one more time. Ask for protection and a new life somewhere far from here. Anthony will take care of it. I've left instructions. You're talking like you might die, I said, panic rising. I'm talking like a man who loves you too much to leave things to chance. He kissed me, slow and thorough and heartbreaking. I love you, Violet Hayes, in case I haven't said it clearly enough. I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You make me want to be better, to build something beyond this life of violence and control. You make me hope for a future I never let myself imagine. I love you too, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. So you better not die, because I have plans for that future too. Then I'll make sure I survive to see them through, he promised. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I moved in with Rosa temporarily, told Sophie to close the shop for renovations, and tried not to watch the news. But I couldn't help seeing the headlines: warehouse fires, shootings, arrests of known mob associates. A war was happening in the shadows of the city, and the man I loved was right in the middle of it. Nico called when he could, always brief, always careful not to give details. I'm okay. It's progressing. I love you. That was usually all I got before he had to go. Maria called me on the 13th day. Come to Sunday dinner, she said. It's safe now. Nico says to come. I drove to her house with my heart in my throat, half expecting to find something horrible. Instead, I found the usual chaos: kids running, food cooking, the TV blaring soccer. And Nico standing in the living room talking to his sisters, looking tired but whole. He saw me and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into his arms and kissing me thoroughly despite his mother's scandalized necko, in front of the children. It's over, he said against my lips. The Carbones are done. Anthony's recovering well. It's over and you're safe, I cried then, relief and residual fear mixing together. He held me through it, one hand stroking my hair, murmuring Italian endearments I didn't understand but felt in my bones. Later, after dinner, we sat in the garden alone. I need to tell you something, he said seriously. Something I've been thinking about while this was all happening. Okay, I said nervously. I want to get out. He said it quietly, like he was afraid the words themselves were dangerous. Not completely, I can't abandon my family. But I want to transition the business. Make it more legitimate. Let my underboss handle the day-to-day operations while I focus on the legal enterprises. Why? Because I'm tired, he admitted. Tired of the violence, the constant threat, the weight of responsibility for everyone's lives and deaths, but mostly because I want a life with you, Violet. A real life. Not one where you have to hide when things get dangerous or where I might not come home because of a war I didn't start. That's a big change. It'll take years, he acknowledged. Maybe 5, maybe 10, but I can start now. Start building something different, something better. He took my hands. If you'll wait for me. If you'll help me become the man you deserve, you're already the man I deserve, I said. Complicated and dangerous and occasionally infuriating, but mine. And yes, I'll wait. I'll help. I'll be there every step of the way. His kiss was grateful and reverent and full of promise. 6 months after finding a bleeding stranger behind my flower shop, I moved into the penthouse. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. Because coming home to Nico every night felt right in a way that nothing else ever had. Rosa approved, of course. About time, she said. That man has been yours since the moment you stitched him up in your back room. The shop was thriving. I'd expanded, taking over the space next door, hiring 2 more employees. We did weddings and events now, some of them for Santoro family businesses, most from regular customers who'd found us through word of mouth. Nico was slowly, carefully beginning his transition. He promoted his most trusted underboss to handle daily operations. He was spending more time on the legitimate businesses, the restaurants were expanding, the construction company was bidding on city contracts. It was slow work, and sometimes he came home frustrated with the pace. But he was doing it. Anthony had recovered fully and was back to work, though with strict orders to delegate more. He'd taken one look at me living in Nico's penthouse and simply said, "About time, Miss Hayes." Sunday dinners continued. Maria was openly planning a wedding, showing me pictures of dresses and venues despite my protests that Nico hadn't even proposed. Valentina just laughed and said, "In Italian families, the proposal is a formality." The decision was made months ago. The black cards stayed in my wallet unused since that first favor for Rose's surgery. It had become more symbol than reality, a reminder of where we'd started, of the impossible promise that had brought us together. On our 6-month anniversary counted from that rainy night in the alley, though I never told him I was counting, Nico came home early from work with flowers. Not from my shop, I noticed, but from some expensive florist in Midtown. "What are these for?" I asked, taking the bouquet of purple violets. "Because your name is Violet and I'm occasionally sentimental," he said with a smile. "And because I have something to ask you." He got down on one knee right there in the living room, pulling out a box that held a ring, simple, elegant, a diamond surrounded by smaller amethysts the color of my namesake flower. "Violet Hayes," he said, and his voice only shook slightly. 6 months ago, you saved my life. Not just by stitching up a wound, but by showing me that there was still good in the world. Still people worth being better for. You've stood by me through violence and danger and family chaos. You've loved me knowing exactly who I am and what I've done. You've made me want to be more than just Don Santoro. You've made me want to be a man worthy of you. Tears were already streaming down my face. I know I'm not easy. I know my world is complicated and dangerous. I know I can be controlling and overprotective and occasionally an idiot." His smile was self-deprecating. "But I love you with everything I am and everything I'm trying to become. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a future with a man who will spend the rest of his life trying to deserve you?" "Yes," I said, pulling him up and kissing him. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring on my finger and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Nico planned everything perfectly. "I love you," he said, holding me close. "More than I thought I was capable of. More than I can put into words." "I love you too," I whispered back. My dangerous, complicated, occasionally infuriating, absolutely perfect partner. We stood there in the penthouse overlooking the city where we'd both been born, where we'd both struggled and survived and somehow found each other, and I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From a bleeding stranger in an alley to this moment, from a black card promising favors to a diamond promising forever. "You know," I said, pulling back slightly, "you still owe me millions in favors." The card said 1 favor equals 1 million, and I've only used 1. Is that so? His eyes gleamed with amusement and heat. "What did you have in mind?" "I'll think of something," I teased. "Maybe something that requires you to spend the rest of your life with me." "Deal?" he said immediately. "Though I should warn you, that's the easiest favor I'll ever grant, because spending my life with you isn't a payment. It's a privilege." He kissed me again, and outside the windows, the city glowed with possibility. My flower shop blooming in Little Italy. His empire slowly transforming into something new. Our future spreading out before us like petals opening to the sun. I'd saved a man's life in an alley behind my flower shop. He'd left me a black card with an impossible promise. And somehow, impossibly, we built something real from that chance encounter, something that defied the odds and the danger and the fundamental incompatibility of our worlds. Because love, I'd learned, doesn't care about logic or safety or the sensible thing to do. Love just blooms where it's planted, grows toward the light, and refuses to be contained by the walls we build around our hearts. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it grows into something beautiful enough to last forever.